He stands alone at the edge of a quiet Tennessee lake, where the morning fog drifts like unspoken memories. Keith Urban, global superstar, guitar alchemist, the man who once electrified stadiums with a single strum, looks nothing like the legend millions still adore. His hair is longer now, softer around the face. His eyes carry a tired brightness, the kind of man earns only by walking through fire and somehow choosing to stay gentle. "Funny," he murmurs to the still water, "how the loudest years of your life can leave the quietest scars." Around him lies the world he built, the lakefront house where he now spends most nights, the studio with glass walls overlooking the water, the guitar resting beside a half-finished song he cannot seem to complete. It is a sanctuary of beauty and a monument to everything he's lost. For 20 years, Keith Urban lived inside a love story the whole world envied, and then on September 30th, 2025, that fairy tale shattered. The divorce papers, the custody plan, the silence of a home once filled with laughter. Every piece of it feels like a note in a song he never wanted to write. He whispers again, 59 days a year, that's all I get with my girls. His voice breaks, not loudly, but in the small, devastating way a man breaks when he is trying not to. Behind the headlines about new tours, new music, new relationships, and rumors swirling through Nashville lounges, there hides a truth darker and deeper than any tabloid has told. Keith Urban is not simply beginning a new chapter, he is trying to remember who he is when the world isn't looking. And the world is always looking. He remembers the smell first, not of fame or guitars or the bright burn of stage lights, but of dust. Dust rising from the red earth of Caboolture, mixing with the warm air of a small Australian town where dreams rarely visited and almost never stayed. It was here, in a house too modest for the size of his imagination, that Keith Lionel Urban first learned the strange truth the universe would keep proving to him again and again. Greatness is never born in comfort. He was 6 when his father placed a guitar in his hands, a cheap, sun-faded thing bought with money the family didn't really have. But when Robert Urban handed it to his youngest son, he wore the look of a man offering something sacred. He held it like a fragile animal, unsure whether he was meant to tame it or let it tame him. From that day on, the guitar became the one object in the house that never gathered dust. His mother, Mary Ann, would sit by the window every evening, sewing tiny rhinestones onto the stage outfits she made by hand. She never complained about the pricked fingers or the hours spent bent over fabric in the dim light. "A star should shine," she would say, "even if he's only playing for 10 people in a room that smells like beer." He would laugh, thinking she was joking. Years later, standing before 20,000 people, he would understand she had never joked a day in her life. But childhood was more than music. Childhood was the ache of wanting something too big for the place you come from. He remembers the talent shows, the sticky floors, the buzzing fluorescent lights, and the paper ribbons taped to the walls. He remembers the way other kids looked at him, half impressed, half suspicious, as if he were holding a secret too bright for such a small town. He remembers the weight of the microphone in his hand, the uneven heartbeat before the music started, and the wild, indescribable rush that filled him the moment his voice met the air. It felt like coming home to a place he had never seen. But even then, the world was already testing him. There were nights when the power went out and he practiced guitar by candlelight. Days when his father, exhausted from the long hours at the shop, still drove him to gigs across Queensland because dreams don't chase themselves, mate. There were weeks when money was thin, when meals were simpler, when Mary Ann mended old clothes instead of buying new ones because every spare dollar went into music lessons, guitar strings, travel. People whispered about the Urbans, about their stubbornness, their obsession, their foolish belief that a boy from nowhere could make it somewhere. Whispers never stopped the music. By 12, Keith had already begun shaping himself into something uncommon. He played with a ferocity that did not belong to children. His fingers moved with hunger. His eyes burned with the kind of focus usually found only in those trying to escape something. By 14, he was performing in clubs alongside men twice his age. Men who drank too much, smoked too much, lived too hard. Keith watched them, studied them, learned from them. Not just the chords. No, he learned the truth hidden in their worn-out faces. Music saves you, and it ruins you, often at the same time. He didn't know then how deeply that truth would carve itself into his adult life. His parents saw the storm forming early. They saw the raw talent, the hunger, the unshakable desire, and they knew Australia could not contain him. So they pushed him, gently at first, then urgently into the world beyond Caboolture. They brought him to television programs like New Faces and Have a Go, dressing him in the outfits Marianne made, cheering from the sidelines as he filled living rooms across the country with a voice still too innocent to understand where it would someday take him. Then came Mark Punch, the mentor who heard in Keith's playing something sharp and powerful, something not yet polished but already undeniable. Mark didn't tell Keith he was talented. He told him he was responsible for that talent. It was the first time Keith understood that gifts, no matter how bright, mean nothing without the grit to protect them. By his late teens, Caboolture felt too small, too quiet for the fire growing in him. So he packed his bags with little more than a guitar, a few clothes, and the steady encouragement of parents who believed in him fiercely enough to let him go. Sydney was the next step. Nashville would come later. But the boy who left home was already carrying the shape of the man he would become. Driven, restless, haunted by melodies even in his sleep, and quietly convinced that his life would be both bigger and lonelier than anyone around him could imagine. Because every dream has a price, and Keith Urban was about to start paying it. Sydney was louder, faster, hungrier. It was a city built for people who arrived with nothing but a dream and the willingness to bleed for it. Keith Urban stepped into it like a young man walking into a storm, unsure if it would carry him forward or tear him apart. In the tiny apartment he rented above a noisy street, he slept beside his guitar case because it was the only thing that felt familiar. He played in bars where the air was thick with smoke and the audience was half drunk before he touched the first chord. But still, they listened. Something in his sound cut through the noise, sharp, electric, full of a restless energy that Sydney couldn't quite define. He formed a band, rehearsed until dawn, wrote songs at the kitchen table with cold coffee and calloused fingers. He learned what it meant to chase gigs, to be rejected, to be underpaid, to keep going anyway. Nights blurred into mornings, weeks stretched into months. The dream didn't get easier, but it got clearer. Sydney taught him something Caboolture never could. Success wasn't about talent, it was about endurance. But even endurance has limits, and eventually Keith realized there was no version of his life that stayed in Australia. Every sign pointed in one direction, the same direction his father's old records had pointed decades earlier: Nashville. The word itself felt mythical, like a destination whispered by fate. And so, with a few $100s, a suitcase, and a stubborn belief that he belonged somewhere bigger than he'd ever known, Keith boarded a plane that would change everything. Nashville welcomed him with cold air and warm indifference. The city didn't care who he was. It didn't care about his talent show trophies or bar gigs or long nights in Sydney. Nashville only cared about one thing: earn your place. So he did. He played guitar for anyone who would listen, sometimes for money, sometimes for nothing. Session work, side gigs, guest appearances. He was everywhere and nowhere, a ghost with a guitar, haunting studios and rehearsal rooms, waiting for someone to hear the thunder he had carried across oceans. The Ranch came next, a country rock trio filled with raw ambition and little else. They rehearsed like their lives depended on it, because in a way, they did. Their album didn't become a commercial success, but something more important happened. People began to talk about the guitarist, the kid with the blonde hair and the fire in his playing, the one who looked like he had come from nowhere, but played like he had something worth losing. And then Nashville did what Nashville always does. It tested him. There were days when he couldn't afford rent, nights he questioned whether he had misread every sign the universe had given him, moments when loneliness felt heavy enough to crush whatever resilience he had left. He knew he was good, but in a city filled with greatness, good wasn't a currency that spent well. Still, he kept showing up. He kept playing until his fingers hurt, writing until words blurred, sending demos to anyone willing to hear them. He was not loud, not flashy, not entitled. He was relentless. And eventually, relentlessness opened a door. It was 1999 when his moment arrived, not with fanfare, but with the quiet certainty of something impossible becoming possible. His self-titled American debut, Keith Urban, released into the world and carried with it a song that would rewrite his life, But for the Grace of God. The song climbed the charts slowly at first, then suddenly, then all at once. Country radio couldn't deny it, Nashville couldn't deny it, America couldn't deny it. For the first time since leaving Caboolture, Keith Urban wasn't surviving anymore. He was rising. From there, momentum became a wave. Golden Road, Somebody Like You, You'll Think of Me, awards, headlines, sold-out crowds, thunderous applause, standing ovations, magazine covers, late-night interviews. The kind of acclaim that doesn't just change careers, it changes people. But Keith wasn't changed, not yet. He was lifted, carried forward by a force that felt like destiny finally recognizing him. Still, in the quiet spaces between shows and studio sessions, he felt the tug of something familiar, a whisper he had heard in Caboolture, in Sydney, on the long flight to America. Success always asks for something back, and he had only begun to understand what it would demand from him. Fame never arrives gently. It breaks in like a storm, bright, loud, undeniable. And when it came for Keith Urban, it didn't knock. It crashed through the door, swept him into its currents, and carried him to heights he had imagined only in the secret corners of childhood. The world he stepped into was nothing like Caboolture, nothing like Sydney, nothing like the uncertain years of Nashville barrooms. This was a world of velvet ropes and private rooms, of flashing lights and red carpets, of strangers who suddenly knew his name as if they had grown up beside him. In those years, Keith's life blurred into something surreal. Somebody Like You exploded across America, transforming him from rising talent to an artist whose songs defined entire seasons of people's lives. Couples proposed to it, families danced to it, teenagers blasted it from open car windows on summer highways, and Keith, some nights, still couldn't believe the voice on the radio was his. Then came Golden Road, Be Here, and a cascade of hits that felt less like releases and more like cultural moments. Each album pushed him higher. Each tour pulled him deeper into a world where the applause was endless, but the silence afterward grew heavier. Fame had a rhythm. He learned it quickly. Mornings in airports, afternoons in studios, nights on stage beneath lights that made every emotion look larger than life. He stood before thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, hearing his name echo from mouths he had never seen, faces he would never meet again. They screamed for him, reached for him, adored him. And when he played, when his fingers danced across the guitar, when his voice broke open a room, he felt something close to transcendence. But transcendence always fades. After each show, he returned to hotel rooms that smelled of linen and loneliness. He sat on beds too big for one person, listening to the quiet hum of air conditioning, wondering why the applause that shook arenas couldn't follow him into the night. Sometimes he stared at the ceiling and whispered into the emptiness, "I should feel grateful. I should feel full." But fame does not fill anyone. It only shines a light on what was already hollow. Still, he kept going, because the music demanded it. By the mid-2000s, Keith had become a phenomenon, an artist who crossed genres without losing his center, a guitarist whose solos felt like conversations, a songwriter whose lyrics carried not just sound, but soul. He was hailed as the man pulling country music forward, threading rock, pop, and heartland storytelling into something unmistakably his own. But while the world saw brightness, something darker was growing in the shadows. A quiet ache, a relentless pressure, a restlessness that fame only intensified. And music, the very thing that saved him as a child, began asking for more than inspiration. It asked for escape. There were nights on the bus, after shows that ended in triumph, when he reached for something stronger than exhaustion, something that dulled the noise, something that softened the sharp edges of the world he lived in. Addiction didn't arrive suddenly. It slipped in the way shadows do at dusk, quietly, almost tenderly, until he could no longer tell where the darkness began or where he ended. People celebrated his success. They did not see the tear in the fabric of his life. They did not hear the silent conversations he had with himself, asking why triumph came with so much fear, so much isolation, so much self-doubt. But even in the midst of this unraveling, something extraordinary happened. Fame brought him love. Her name was Nicole Kidman, a woman whose presence felt like calm after years of storms, like a song he had been trying to write his whole life but never had the right words for. Their connection was immediate, intense, almost mythic. Two global figures, two artists who understood the violence and vulnerability of public life, finding refuge in each other. Together, they became a symbol: elegance, talent, devotion. A love story people admired, envied, romanticized. And for a time, it seemed as if love might save him from the darker chapters fame was writing behind the scenes. But love cannot cure what a man refuses to confront. And one night, quiet, unremarkable, devastating, he realized he was losing himself, losing her, losing everything he had fought for since Caboolture. He reached out for help. He chose to step into the light again. He chose to fight. Redemption doesn't erase scars, but it teaches a man how to live with them. Keith emerged from that fight with a steadier voice, clearer eyes, and a deeper understanding of the fragile miracle of being alive. Fans noticed something different in his music, a tenderness, a wisdom that could only have been carved by pain. But the cost of fame was not done with him. Even as he rose higher, Grammy after Grammy, tour after tour, collaboration after collaboration, the quiet truth remained. Every dream he ever wanted had come true. And yet, somewhere deep beneath the roar of applause, a quieter longing grew, one that no award, no sold-out show, no global success could satisfy. Tragedy rarely arrives as a single moment. It gathers slowly, like a quiet rain that becomes a flood, like a trembling note that eventually breaks the entire chord. And for Keith Urban, tragedy came in layers. The first layer was the one he carried privately, the long shadow of addiction. Though he emerged from recovery with a clearer mind and a steadier heart, the scars it left behind never fully faded. There were days, far from cameras, far from crowds, when he felt that old pull, that familiar whisper of escape curling around the edges of his thoughts. He didn't fall again, but he knew the darkness well enough to fear it. Addiction is not a chapter you close. It is a companion you learn to walk beside. But the deeper tragedy didn't come from the past. It came from the life he built after it. For nearly 20 years, the world believed Keith and Nicole were unbreakable. They were a portrait of devotion, two artists who met at the height of their careers, who loved fiercely, who raised two daughters with laughter and discipline and a gentleness that surprised even those closest to them. There were red carpets and hand-holding and anniversary tributes that made headlines. There were quiet moments the world never saw, small, tender things that Keith held onto like sacred keepsakes. Nicole's hand resting on his chest when he couldn't sleep, the way their daughters whispered secrets to him on long drives, Sunday's shy smile, Faith's loud, fearless laugh. He loved being a father. He loved being a husband. He loved the home they built. But love does not always survive the storms life creates. Sometimes the storms are silent. It happened slowly. Schedules stretched, conversations shortened, distance grew, not in miles, but in the invisible space between two hearts that no longer fit together the way they once did. Insiders would later say there were irreconcilable differences. But differences don't break a marriage. Silences do. By the summer of 2025, the couple was living apart. On September 30th, the papers were filed. And just like that, the story the world believed in, the fairy tale, ended. But public endings are gentler than private ones. The custody agreement arrived like a blow he hadn't prepared for. Nicole would be the primary residential parent. The girls would live with her for 306 days a year. Keith would have 59 days. Alternate weekends, scattered holidays, carefully measured time. 59 days. A number that lodged itself in his chest like a splinter he could never remove. He stared at the document for a long time, not because he disagreed with it. Nicole was a devoted mother, dedicated, stable, present, but because he felt the weight of what he was losing. He knew the industry whispered cruel things. He tours too much. He's always on the road. He chose music over family. They didn't know. They didn't see. They didn't understand that fame isn't a choice. It's a current. And sometimes it sweeps a man farther from home than he ever meant to go. He tried to hide the pain. He smiled during interviews, thanked fans at shows, finished the High and Alive tour with the same electrifying energy he'd always brought. But inside he felt hollowed out, like someone had carved out the center of him and left the edges standing. Loneliness doesn't shout. It whispers. It creeps. It sits beside you in beautiful rooms and asks, "Who are you now?" And in Nashville, in the house that suddenly felt larger and quieter than ever before, Keith Urban found himself confronting questions he had avoided for years. What happens when the applause fades? What happens when the world still loves you but the place you called home no longer does? What happens when a man who spent his life giving music to millions loses the two voices that mattered most? The rumor mill made everything worse. Whispers began spiraling through Nashville about him and Kelsey Ballerini, studio sessions, quiet dinners, laughing too much at private events. Some said he was helping her heal after her own heartbreak. Others said something more was blooming. Keith said nothing. Kelsey said nothing. But silence is fuel, and speculation became wildfire. He didn't ask for attention. He didn't ask for gossip. He didn't ask for the spotlight to turn toward the most vulnerable chapter of his life. But fame is merciless. It never looks away. Behind the headlines, the man himself was unraveling, not into chaos, but into something softer, sadder, truer. The tragedy was not scandal or betrayal or downfall. It was something far more human. The quiet grief of a father missing his children, the aching loss of a marriage he tried to save, the fear of starting over at an age when the world thinks you should have everything figured out. But even in the heaviness, a small ember remained, a part of him that still believed in second chances, in music as salvation, in the possibility that life, even shattered, could be beautiful again. But to reach that ember, he would have to confront the truth he had avoided his entire career, the truth fame had buried, success had disguised, and heartbreak had finally unearthed. There is a moment in every man's life when the noise finally stops. For Keith Urban, that moment came not on stage, not in a studio, not under spotlights or beside crowds, but alone, in the stillness of a room that once held the laughter of his daughters. Their drawings were still pinned to the wall. A tiny pink hair tie still lay forgotten beside the couch. A half-finished school project sat on the table where they used to do homework together. He picked it up, ran his fingers over the paper, then carefully put it back, afraid that moving it would erase something he couldn't name. That was the night he realized the truth he had avoided for most of his life. You can build a world powerful enough to shake continents and still lose the one world that truly matters. Hidden beneath the applause, behind the fame, under the layers of success and survival, was a truth Keith had carried since childhood. He had always been running from Caboolture's smallness, running from Sydney's uncertainty, running from Nashville's indifference, running toward music, toward greatness, toward applause, toward anything that made him feel like he was enough. But running comes with a cost, and the cost was finally standing before him, silent and undeniable. He realized he had spent decades mastering how to be heard, yet had never learned how to let himself feel. Music was his translation. Guitar strings were his language. Songs were his confessions. Real conversations, honesty without melody, vulnerability without rhythm, those were much harder. He could speak to millions, but struggled to speak to the few people who mattered most. That was the hidden truth. It wasn't addiction. It wasn't fame. It wasn't the divorce. It wasn't the rumors or the exhaustion or the relentless pull of the road. It was that deep inside, Keith Urban had never stopped being the boy in Caboolture, gripping a guitar because it was easier than gripping his own emotions. Music became his shield, his refuge, his escape, his weapon, his prayer. He poured everything into it: joy, pain, fear, longing, so he wouldn't have to say any of it out loud. And the world loved him for it. But the people closest to him needed more than a melody. They needed a man willing to sit still long enough to be seen. They needed a man willing to stay home even when the world demanded he tour. They needed a man who didn't hide behind work, behind perfection, behind the machine of fame. He thought he had more time to learn these things. But time is the cruelest currency. It runs out exactly when you need it most. After the divorce, after the custody ruling, after the speculation about Kelsa began to swirl like a gathering storm, Keith confronted a truth he had never dared to face. Love is not lost in a single moment. It is lost in the small moments we ignore. The missed dinners, the hurried goodbyes, the phone calls cut short, the promises postponed, the exhaustion disguised as dedication, the belief that tomorrow will always come. He thought success would protect his family. He thought providing was the same as being present. He thought loving deeply was the same as loving well. It wasn't. And now, standing in a quiet house filled with memories more vivid than the present, he felt the truth pierce him. You can be a good man and still fail the people you love. But tragedy does not end a man. It reveals him. In the weeks that followed, Keith stopped running. He began showing up differently. Not on stage, not online, but in the quiet places that mattered. He called his daughters every night, not because he had to, but because he finally understood that these small conversations were the real music of his life. He stepped back from the noise, from the swirl of rumors, from the pressure to define his next move. He wrote songs not for radio, not for charts, not for tours, but because writing was the only way he knew how to stitch himself back together. He kept his circle small. He let silence teach him what sound never had. People speculated. Whispers grew. Fans wondered. Has he found new love? Is he rebuilding? Is his heart open again? But Keith knew the truth. Before he could love anyone else, before he could even decide what the future looked like, he had to learn how to love the man he had become. The man scarred but sober, broken but healing, alone but not lost, still searching, still hopeful, still writing the song of his life, one note at a time. And so here he stands, Keith Urban. Not the superstar, not the headline, not the man the world insists on defining, but simply a human being who has walked through brilliance and brokenness, through applause and absence, through love gained and love lost. The lake is quiet tonight. The air is soft. Somewhere in the distance, a lone bird cries, and the sound ripples across the water like a reminder that even solitude has a pulse. He closes his eyes and breathes. For the first time in a long time, it is enough. Life has taken much from him, but it has also left him with something rare: clarity. The understanding that happiness is not found in the roar of a stadium, nor in the weight of awards, nor in the sparkle of fame. It is found in the small, unremarkable moments. A daughter's laugh on the phone, a melody forming in silence, the warm touch of sunrise on a quiet morning. Maybe love will find him again. Maybe it already has, waiting patiently in the wings of some new beginning. Maybe the rumors will fade, or intensify, or turn into stories no one can predict. But tonight, none of that matters. What matters is this: he is still here, still standing, still writing, still learning how to live a life that is fuller, simpler, softer than the one he chased for decades. Keith Urban once ran from the world to become someone extraordinary. Now he is learning to walk slowly enough to finally become himself. And sometimes that is the greatest comeback of all.